Another beautiful day in the greenhouse. Just doing a little update here. So as the water is filling in the tank behind me here, I'm working with onions again today. This time of the year, basically what you're doing is you're waiting for these little babies here. You can maybe see them. Artichokes hortensis. They're starting to come up now. Slowly. And then over here I've got Hubblitzia. This whole bed is just Hubblitzia, and it won't remain that. It's just stratifying for the next 2-3 weeks until they're little babies, and then I'll take them out. That's chard. Also, it'll just a cover crop for now. The different kinds of kales are looking quite nice. Siberian red, red Russian over here. And I'm eating that. I'm eating a lot of this cress and nettle, and more I'm going over to spinach now, which is starting to come up quite nicely. So within the next couple of weeks it'll be spinach all day long. Anyway, I'm just trying to explain what I do in terms of, a lot of people talk about companion planting and whether that's really something or not. I don't really know the whole history of companion planting, but for me it's not so much about whether plants actually like each other or not. That's sort of, to me, a kind of a ridiculous idea. But it's more about whether they fit together or not. So if you can see here on the front row, I've got garlic. These were baby garlics 2 years ago. They were all in a bunch. Kind of like you can see here, there's still a bunch of garlic all stuck together. So what I'll do is I'll put them all really close together in an area where they're not taking much space. And I'll leave them there for a couple of years until they bulk up. And then when they get big enough, I'll lay them out on a line. So I laid these 2 lines deep last year. And as you can see, I have them on the south side. Garlic are very thin. All the alliums tend to be fairly thin. That means that they don't create much shade. So if you put them on the south side, they also have very shallow roots, so they don't compete very well. But if you put them on the south side, firstly what you do is they come up very early, so they block weeds. So if you take, here's a good example. Here you've got an awful weed, right? That just grows and spreads like a weed. And it'll crawl right up in here, like this, and make all kinds of havoc in your bed. You want to avoid that. So the quicker you can create a boundary in your bed, the better. And alliums come up early. So I consider that to be a companion plant in the sense that it works well for me in the niche of occupying space early in the season. And that keeps the weeds at bay. And then it also doesn't compete at all. See that? That's what you want to avoid. It doesn't compete at all with the plants. The main plant, whatever the main plant in this bed is going to be, will be in the middle of the bed, right? So there we have a pawpaw. This is its 3rd year. So these onions here won't compete at all with the pawpaw. Look at this thing trying to pretend to be an onion. See? Biomimicry in the wrong direction here. Let's get this thing out. And this is what will happen if you don't watch it. These terrible things will take over your beds. So be careful. Anyway, what I'm doing now is I'm taking the alliums that have been bulking up through the winter, and I'm placing them out on the south side. So here you can see some leek. I sadly can't recall what kind of leek this is. This is one of my main problems with alliums, is that I plant them and then the little tags like this disappear, or I can't read my own handwriting or something, and then I've got problems later on remembering. But in any case, these are definitely leek, and what I'm doing is I'm planting them out. So I have them in bunches, right, like this, and as I'm gradually weeding, I'm just going in and breaking up alliums like this, pulling them up. This is the benefit of having aerated soil. It's like super easy to move stuff around. This way I can break up all the, these are now 1 year old. It was about this time last year that I sowed them, or a little bit earlier. Suppose I probably sowed them in January, February last year. And the benefit now is that I get to separate the weed from the onions, and then I give them space. So when they're in the first year, they hardly need any space. So you can have 5 or 6, like I have here, sometimes even 10 alliums next to each other because they're teeny tiny. And after 1 year, and what you do is the same as you do with carrots, right? When you plant a lot of carrots together, you always take the biggest ones, always harvest the biggest ones. That gives space for the little ones to put on weight. So what you'll notice here is that at some point you'll see that I'll have harvested one from a bunch like this, and it's always the biggest one that I harvest. Always the biggest one. I'm giving the little ones time to put on weight. All right, you get the picture. In here, there's a good 7 or 8 alliums, right? And there was another 5 or 6. And I just lay them out on a line. I lay them all out on a line. So this whole line here will be spread out over this bed and this bed. And that way I already now, in late March, have big rows of alliums growing. They've overwintered, and most alliums can overwinter fairly well. So if you have a lot of alliums, the chance that you'll not have alliums the next year is almost null. Here's another one, which is Welsh onion, and them also are all bunched up, because when you sow them you have quite a lot of seed sown together, and they come in bunches. Here's another bunch of some kind of alliums that I'll need to split up. And here's another one. This is surnum, of some sort of surnum onion. And you can see here I intentionally placed them in front of this super hardy kiwi because it wasn't going to compete at all. And yeah, so here's another bed that I'm about to start on. And again, here, right, these are all alliums that were bunched up, and now they're unbunched. And in this case, again, it's about whether they compete or not. So companion in terms of competition makes sense, definitely. I always think of everything in terms of waves. Sow in terms of waves, grow in terms of waves, eat in terms of waves. And if your waves are competing with each other, they'll cancel each other out, which you don't want. Whereas if they come in sets, just like surfing, then you'll be able to ride the waves one after the other. So this is why when I'm working also, I try to only do, like in this case, you can see 3 beds. I did these 3 beds in 1 day. But that's it. When I've done 3 beds, I move on to something else, like sowing or weeding or something. And the same thing with weeding. I'll only weed 3 beds in a day. That way your arms don't get worn out, your elbows don't get worn out, your mind doesn't get worn out. You keep changing and changing and flowing, and yeah, bring more diversity into your experience. And that way also, if you're making a mistake that day, you'll have limited it to 3 beds. You won't have destroyed a whole section of your greenhouse or your garden or whatever it is you're working on. All right.